the biggest reason I'm a teacher and now a head teacher is I want every child to know that they can succeed, and I want us all to do everything that we can to allow them to do that.
What's your supply budget look like?
We've never used a supply teacher. And I can remember sitting in the class every day just being frightened that I would be picked to read.
We're joined today by Phil Brook, inner city head teacher, breaking the mold and overcoming barriers. I arrived at your school on a cold November morning at the same time as many of the children. And the first thing that struck me was the sense of joy around the building. And it made me wonder, do you have a mantra or something that inspires you when you're creating this joy around school?
I think it's really important that the children come in and are happy and are cared for, and also the same for the staff. So what we want for the children, we want the same for the staff as well. And the easiest way for me to think about it is I have two young girls myself, Eleanor and Hattie, and they go to primary school. When they get dropped off in the morning, the most important thing to me is that they're cared for and they're happy when they're at their school. And hundreds of parents do the same and drop their children off at our school each morning, and they want the children to come in with a smile on their face and they want them to leave with a smile on their face. So that feeling of happiness and being cared for is probably what it's all about, isn't it? You know, and that's what we want. And if the whole school shares that culture and ethos, then it's a nice place to be. And I'm glad you felt welcomed, you know, when you came. That's important.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in my job that I get to visit many schools, and often I'll go and I'll see quotes of Gandhi on the wall, but the school doesn't have that feeling, it doesn't have the warmth. So yeah, it was a really nice at Alexandra Park.
They are lovely children. They absolutely are. You know, so if I walk along the corridor, they will ask me how I'm doing about my day. You know, there's a real nice feel, and they're polite, they're friendly, they're fantastic children. And I think, you know, like when that happens, everyone buys into that, and the staff treat them with respect, and we're as polite to them as we want them to be to us. So all of that kind of escalates, doesn't it, and just creates a nice feel. And what you say, people do comment when they come in, and if we take them on a trip, they'll always say how polite and friendly the children are. So it's a culture of care, and one where we foster really positive relationships with the children, and that makes them feel happy and works for everyone, I think. But thank you.
You're welcome. I certainly feel when I started my career as a primary school teacher, there was two sides to the job. One was I need to teach these children how to read, write and do maths and other foundation subjects. But bigger than that was my job as a primary school teacher is to create lovely little human beings who can function in society, who understand, who are empathetic and considerate. And I feel sometimes that's missed in our education system because of external pressures, probably. But that was always at the heart of what I did. That's the number one important thing.
We want them to be caring people. We want them to care for themselves, each other, the world that they live in. That's really important. I absolutely agree. They need to have an understanding of maths and English and be strong in those areas. They will allow them, you know, like to be successful. But more than that, they have to be good citizens, and the foundations that we give them at primary school really allow them to do that. So I know we had the Year 6 Leavers Assembly at the end, you know, and when I looked out at the children, I could look at them and I knew we'd done everything that we can to help them. And I was genuinely very proud of every single one of those children. And that, when I'm thinking about how proud I am, it's not the results that they got at the end, it's that they're fantastic people, and that's what we want. And I know that they will go on and be the best versions of themselves. So, you asked about a quote, and I went away and I thought about it, and I do use quotes a lot in training and things, but there's one that stands out, and it's more of a TED talk. I saw a TED talk by Rita Pearson, and she talks about every child needing a champion. And that stuck with me, and I've used that video lots, and I must have seen it dozens and dozens of times. You know, like if you ever track back the history, I think I'm probably the person who's seen that video the most. And she talks about every child needing a champion, and that person who's going to inspire the children and not just want them to succeed, but to do everything they possibly can and not accept them not succeeding, and succeeding in all areas of life. So when she talks about this, I think, you know, like as a teacher, I do like to think I did everything I can to inspire the children and know that they were happy. And then when I made the decision to become a head teacher, I thought about it a little bit more. I've got a great opportunity so that, you know, when the children look back, it's not just that one champion teacher, you know, like you can fill a school full of them, you know, like you can fill a school where every teacher and every teaching assistant, everyone working in the office is that inspirational person for the children. And that's what we set out to do. So on my first inset, that's the video I showed at the start of every year. I show that video. If I recruit new teachers, I show that video and I talk about it and say, it's quite clear what I want. I want champion teachers, you know, that inspire the children, and every single person is on the same, you know, like the same path to do that, and that's what we do. And when I look back at that video, so I think I must have been looking at it for maybe 6 or 7 years, and then when I look at the teachers that we have at our school and the teaching assistants we have at the school, they are every bit as good as she is, you know, and that's amazing for the children, isn't it? It really does give them every chance that they possibly can, you know, like of succeeding. And also not just for the children in it. If you're a teacher and a teaching assistant and you're part of that and you know how much difference you're making, that's a great place to be, isn't it? You know, like there's lots of different things you can do for motivation, but actually knowing that you are making a big difference to children's lives, there's got to be no greater motivation from that. And yeah, I work at a school where every member buys into that, and that's going back to what you said at the beginning, that's why it feels like it does. So yeah, great.
It feels like a school that I would love to work at, where I have my ethos of I'm trying to create lovely little human beings, and like you say, that's being noticed and rewarded. And you're not just doing maths from 9 till 10 and English from 10:15 to 11:15, but there's a bigger picture, and that's reflected in the school. That's really nice. It made me think, I wonder if these are reflections from Phil's experience of school, at primary school. Was that a loving, caring environment?
Yeah. I think I enjoyed primary school. You know, there was lots of aspects. I enjoyed, you know, like making friends there, which I think is a big part of primary school and a big part of it for our children as well. So my friends that I see at the weekend are still my friends now, are friends that I met at school. So I do think that's a big part of it. But the other aspect of it is I struggled at primary school. So I remember certain things I'll find challenging. So I didn't used to talk about this until I'd advanced my career to a stage where I felt comfortable. So I'm dyslexic. I'm very dyslexic. I struggle to read, and even now I struggle to read out loud. So this is why I can do this as a talk rather than have notes, because I won't be able to read the notes and do it at the same time. So if you're at school and you find things different and difficult, such as reading and remembering facts, it's not actually a nice place to be. You know, it's challenging. And as a competitive boy, you know, like so many, if we're not good at something, you know, like sometimes the easiest thing to do is not enter, you know, like so. I didn't do well at primary school, and then by the time it came to high school, you know, I'd switched off learning. I liked my PE lessons, you know, like I liked my art lessons, and actually I was okay at maths, but English, you know, I couldn't read well. I couldn't write well, you know, and it actually takes a certain sort of mindset, doesn't it, to keep working hard at something you're not good at. And I don't think I'm the only person that stops. So trying to inspire children to do that so that they believe they can still, you know, like succeed later on, even though they might find things different and difficult to start with.
What did that look like for you then at primary school? How did you feel? Because a lot of the curriculum is centred around reading. Yeah. And what were your coping strategies? You talked about stopping and not wanting to take part. What did that manifest itself as? Yeah,
the best example, and I'll come to why it's so important to me now, but the best example I can give is it was a high school one. In our English lesson, we used to have a book, and we used to read the book in class. One person would read it, and it was Lord of the Flies. And I can remember sitting in the class at high school, every day just being frightened, you know, that I would be picked to read. And obviously, you know, like the teacher knew I wasn't good at it. So, you know, like she didn't pick me. But when she did, you know, like she said, well, I read a paragraph, and I really struggled. And I remember saying, that's enough there, thank you. And then she said, actually, that's more than enough, you know. And I think I was about 13 then, and I don't think I read another book for another 10 years, you know, and that sort of thing goes against everything I believe, you know, and perhaps why I'm a teacher. And it's not because I have a love of a specific subject, it's that I don't want children to have that experience, and I want them to have the complete opposite experience, that actually if they find something challenging, you know, like we put more support in place, because I wasn't stupid, I just found certain things difficult, you know, but primary school and the learning of knowledge and the basic things you have to do doesn't lend itself to that, whereas the basics I struggle with. But as I became older, I realised that I could do certain things, but you don't have the foundations. But often you've gone through school and you've given in before then, haven't you? So you never get an opportunity to realise that you actually can do more. So I think the biggest reason I'm a teacher and now a head teacher is that I want every child to know that they can succeed, and I want us all to do everything that we can to allow them to do that, and making the adjustments so they can is so important.
You definitely see children who feel it is that they expect they're going to fail, and the easiest way to fail is to not take part.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just to exit from it, and whether that be through disruptive behaviour, and they know they'll be removed from the situation, or being a class clown, so they don't have to read the paragraph.
I think I did both of them. but you do, because if you can't succeed in one area, you make your own rules, don't you? And you're successful in another one, or you know, like you're successful in messing around, or whatever it is. But I think that's human nature, and I see it. So the younger children in year 1 and 2, I will see them keep working, and when they get to year 3, I think some of those children realise actually they are finding it difficult, and it's not a nice place to be. You know, like it really isn't if you find it difficult. So what we have to do is ensure that they don't find it difficult. And what's interesting at the moment, we're doing a lot of work on adaptive teaching, which I'm loving, and it's a case of ensuring that our children, our quality first teaching caters for those children in class, you know, so they receive the support and the lesson allows them to succeed. Because the other thing that I don't want is those children struggling through every maths and English lesson, and then I think you know what I'm going to say, and then coming out of lessons in the afternoon to do it more interventions on maths and English. So the work that we're doing on the moment around adapting our lessons so that they receive the absolute best quality first teaching and succeed then, and then enjoy the maths and English lesson, and then enjoy the lessons in the afternoon is so much more important. So I'm excited about that at the moment.
Great. It's lovely to hear you talk about, I've identified a problem and then here's our solution, and we'll hear more about the adaptive teaching as we go on. An example I hear quite a lot at the moment, especially from my role going into schools, people talk to me about, okay, what about our GDS children? What about those high flyers? What can we do for them? And I see this behaviour that we're talking about mirrored in the greater depth children sometimes, that we want to give them opportunities to get stuck. And they really often, they don't like that because school has been easy for them. And they've been able to answer all the questions, they've been able to understand everything. Then they get put in these challenging situations, and then you see the behaviours that you might see in children who don't find things as easy. So it makes me think, there is usually a trigger, and I've heard behaviour specialists and pastoral staff talk about there's always a trigger, and you've just got to find what that trigger is. And maybe, like you say, the trigger is, I don't find this easy, I'm nervous inside, I'm scared about having to read a paragraph or having to do this question because I can't do it. Do you identify triggers at school and try and work around those, or how do you manage it?
So I think one of the things that you referred to with the GDS children particularly, if you start primary school and you find it easy, you know, then you're more likely to try harder and develop better learning behaviours, aren't you? So the one approach is that you're more likely to do well. So every lesson that you're in, you're enjoying it, you're succeeding. So you're succeeding leads to motivation, you know, it really does. So the better you are at something, the harder you're going to try. But then those children might not have struggled as much, and you will come to a stage in your education or your career where you will find it difficult. And I think if you never experienced that growing up, then you're going to find it quite hard. I think they call them brittle brilliance, you know, like whereas they hit a point where it's very, very, very hard for them. So I think talking to children about how they learn, creating opportunities for them to struggle is a good thing. You know, the learning pit where children go in and they find something difficult. I think that's quite important. But one of the things that we've focused on recently or over the last few years is we might put those challenges in place and just expect the children, you know, like to work out why we're doing it. So now at the school, we spend a lot more time explaining the why, you know, like making it explicit in that you are doing this task, you are meant to find it difficult. The reason you're going to find it difficult is that you will learn to overcome problems. So, you know, like not just the knowledge they're getting from it, but actually the learning behaviour. So making things explicit and not the children not just try to work it out for themselves of what we're trying to get across. I think
so. Linking into the metacognition. And that kind of thinking about thinking.
So that's huge. So well, you'll know from the metacognition makes the biggest difference to children as learners. But again, those children that find things easy will naturally have good metacognition, but other children we have to teach it to. So yeah, we spend a lot of time talking to the children about metacognition, explaining why they're doing something, what success looks like, not just within knowledge, but in metacognition. Something I read a long time ago was about lessons having more than a learning objective, you know, so that's what I want the lessons in our school. So you might be learning multiplication, but equally you might be learning resilience, or you might be learning to collaborate, or you might be learning to work independently. So that message is constantly reinforced to the children, and we can see that the difference that's making to them as learners, you know, like, yeah, it's fantastic.
If we come back to your time at school just for a minute, so at what point did you get a diagnosis of dyslexia, and how did that change your journey through education?
Yeah, really good question. I didn't. So I didn't at primary school and I didn't at high school. I left high school with a couple of GCSEs and started working as a joiner the next week. And it's a bit of a long way to get to your answer, but I will get to it. So I started work as a joiner, and then from there, I enjoyed working as a joiner. You know, like I used to fit bedrooms and kitchens, and at the end of the day, I'd made something, you know, and the person that I'd made it for was, you know, like happy with it, you know, and that was a nice feeling. But it was a family business, and I remember thinking, actually, I might need to know a little bit about business. So I went back to night school and I did a GCSE in business studies, and then I did an A-level in business studies as well, and at night school, and it was I enjoyed the learning, but then going back to your question, then I decided to do a degree whilst working as a joiner at the same time as well, and I couldn't do it. You know, I couldn't do the writing, and I couldn't do the reading. And one of the lecturers there, you know, like spoke to me about it, and I had to hand in a piece of writing, and she said, "You can't write, can you?" And I said no, because like before, if I had to hand it in, you know, like my mum would check it for me, or you know, like and change it around, and I had to do a piece of writing in the class, and she said, "You can't write," and I said no, and she said, "Do you know why?" And I said no, and she went, you know, like she said, "Well, why don't we see if you can do this dyslexia test?" And she did it. And I went away to I don't know where I went to a university, and you know, like they did the test, and it was all around reading and remembering numbers, and I couldn't do any of it. But I couldn't not do it a little bit, you know. I had no idea, you know, like someone would say the numbers back and I couldn't do it, and that was the reason basically that I'd switched off education, you know, and found it so hard. So I've had to do a lot of work from there to learn those skills that I need to know in order to do my job and be successful in life. I wish I'd started learning that at 6 or 7 and 8 rather than at 23, 24, you know, and again, going back to the point I make, you know, like I don't want children to go through the experience that I have and only work out that they can do things when they're older, when actually they can do things when they're younger, as long as we help them. So yeah, so I was an adult when I got diagnosed. I did go to uni, so I worked as a joiner and carried on working, but a university course, I think you can combine the two. So I did a degree in business studies, and I thought that that's what I wanted to do, and go on and be a successful. I'm interested in marketing, like I say. I like working out what people want to know, and then supplying it for them. And that's what I thought my career would be. And then I got a job at an internet and marketing agency. So my university lecturer, he said, look, you've done well on this course. I know someone who wants someone to go and work for them, and he got me the job, which was great. And I remember going there, and I couldn't do it. They said, oh, can you write this report, or can you write this document for the newspaper, a PR release? And I couldn't do it because all my life, I had someone to check things for me, so a friend at uni would read through my assignments. But when you grow up in the real world, your weaknesses are exposed, and I couldn't do it. And I remember going there and I was thinking, whoa, I've put all this effort in and actually I can't do it. And that was a really bad point for me. So we, me and a group of friends, a couple of them were backpacking and they were going to Australia, and the rest of us were out on a night out in Fallowfield, and we were saying, what should we do for Christmas and New Year? And we all decided to go to Australia for Christmas and New Year, and there was about 20 of us went to Bondi. Wow. Amazing experience. And then when it came to going back, I didn't go back. So most of them went back from the holiday, and I think I stayed in Australia for a year and a half. I didn't really know where I was up to as well, so I'd put all that effort in, and then actually I couldn't do the job that I'd set out to do, which I haven't really spoke about before, to be honest. That's a bit, I guess I miss out on my story usually, but I couldn't, so even if you can do well in a degree, you do need to still know the basics, and it will be exposed. So that's when, I stayed in Australia for a year and a half, and then still didn't want to come home, so or grow up. So I got a flight over to Bali, and then from there I travelled around Asia for about 9 months, and during that period of time, that's where I decided that I wanted to teach. So I went to Cambodia, and this was about 2000, and when I went to Cambodia, I went to these temples around Angkor Wat, which are absolutely stunning temples. And what I noticed when I was there is, some of the children that could speak English, they could make money from tourism, and they could do quite well, but there's a lot of poverty, there certainly was there in that country as well. So I saw this, and I saw the difference between people. And then I was staying in a little hut near the river, and I was playing with the children in the river in the day. We were jumping off the tree into the river, which was a fun day and a really nice thing to do. But then they asked me to go to their school. So I went to their school, and I taught, I just spoke to them in English. They spoke to me in English, and it was a really nice thing to do. So I went back the next day, and I taught another lesson the next day. And then I remember thinking, this could be a great thing to do. And I thought that if I could work in a school such as this one and teach these children English, then they can create a better future for themselves. It's something that can make a huge difference to them. And that I decided, that's what I want to do. I want to come back to Cambodia, and work at a school. And I had a big, I'm a bit of a dreamer, I will admit to that. I had a big plan. I was thinking, if I come back to Cambodia, I could set up a school. And at this school, I could teach the children English, and then and then they could link to tourism, and then they could take people around the temples, and that's what it could look like. And they said they could get a job and then get a better future. And I was thinking, that's a great idea. I still had my barriers around reading and spelling, and I went to a market stall in Cambodia, and I bought a grammar book, and I bought a spelling book. And then for the rest of the time that I travelled, every day I read this grammar book and I read this spelling book, and I wrote down all the words that I couldn't spell, and I tried to teach myself to spell over that period of time. And so going back, this bit weird, but I'll do it. So some words are EI rather than IE.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing which ones they were. And there was, I collected them all down, and it was the conceited foreigner who practiced deceit, gazed at the ceiling and seized the receipt and the counterfeit caffeine and protein. And I made this up and I learned them all. And that's 20 years ago. And I learned them all. And then I just wrote down and I wrote little ways of learning all the spellings. But actually now thinking about it, it wasn't that I learned the spellings. It's going back to what you were saying about metacognition. I learned how to learn, and I learned that I wanted to learn. You know, so the reason I couldn't spell, and I really couldn't spell, is because I'd never tried. You know, so it's similar to reading. You know, we say about it, it's not I couldn't read. It's because I didn't try hard enough to read, and dyslexia really isn't an excuse for not being able to read and not being able to spell. It's because I stopped after that. So I taught myself all of these things as I travelled. I read every day. I learned spell. I read these grammar books, and I travelled round, and I travelled probably for another 5 months and did it every single day. And then I came back and I went to voluntary services overseas, and I thought, and I went to them and I explained what I wanted, and I said, I want to go to Cambodia and do these things, and they said, well, you can't actually do that, but you know, like we have schools all over the world where, you know, like we train people and they go into the schools, and they had a school in rural China, a teacher training college, and they were talking about it there, and I applied for that job. And what my job was going to rural China, a beautiful place called Xingyi, and I worked with all the trainee teachers in the area, and I taught them to improve their spoken English, because they'd learned English, but in a way that was all grammar based and textbook based without speaking. So I taught them the spoken English.
The Stockport dialect.
Yeah, that is the other thing. There'll be lots of people with really bad accents in that area. Yeah, and I did that for 2 years, and then I remember thinking at the end, they would VSO say, well, you go back now, and then someone else goes to do it. And I think part of my personality is I want to solve problems, and I want things to be better. So again, I spoke to VSO and said, what about if I stay another year and I teach the teachers the things that I can do with regards to teaching methods? And I met with them, and we had this conversation, and we agreed that I'd stay another year. And I taught, and it's not groundbreaking stuff that I taught them, but we just talk about having like doing things in paired work and modelling the language. So the things that I did as a language teacher, I taught the teachers at the university to do, and then they put teaching methods in, and then other schools that VSO, other teacher training colleges at VSO do the same now, you know, like, so
wow.
that's something I'm quite proud of, you know. And then from there, yeah, I knew I wanted to be a teacher for then. That's when I came back and did my PGCE. My job is now as a head teacher, but I know in my current school, you know, there's 14 teachers, and every one of them will do everything they can to inspire the children, and, you know, like will do more perhaps than was done for me. I know Wetherspoons bar, I heard something that the person who set it up, his teacher said, you're never going to be successful. His teacher was called Mr. Wetherspoon, so it was like, I've done it despite you.
Wow.
I'm not like that, you know, like, I like the story, but I'm not bitter about it, you know, like, so it has no relevance what my experience was like, other than I want better for the children under my care at my school, you know. So when we've spoken previously, every child is finishing my school as a reader, you know, like that is something I'm absolutely passionate about, you know, and they're finishing as a really strong reader. So reading will never be a barrier to any child's education or happiness that goes to our school, you know, like it absolutely won't. And they will sit through, you know, like they will sit through their high school, and they will be able to access all of that learning, you know, and hopefully enjoy it as well, because they all finish as really strong readers, and we will do absolutely everything that we can to ensure that's in place. So as more specifically, we have an extra teacher in reception that just focuses on speech and language and reading, and I have a non-contact reading lead across the school as well, you know, to make sure it's the best it can possibly be. And I know our school now, from in the last 10 years, you know, like the level that the children finish reading is pretty phenomenal, to be honest. You know, like, so yeah, I'm really pleased with how that's going. That said, everyone in our school knows that I want them to be better. You know, like, so yeah, we they are good readers, but they will be even better readers. So those children coming through our school, like in reception year 1, year 2 now, will have a better experience than the ones that went through before, because we will continually get better and better and better, and reading will always be a focus. Even though as an individual, I prefer maths, and my training's all been in maths, but I do think reading's the most important thing. That can be a barrier, and that's a barrier we have to take away.
So I feel like, looking from the outside, that you're the perfect person to facilitate that reading journey because of your experiences. And I've got a little bit of a maths background, and I see lots of maths lessons, and often teachers will say to me, I'm not very good at maths, and I'm not confident teaching it. And my answer to that is always that often teachers who are less confident or struggled with maths themselves at school are some of the best teachers of maths, but because they can understand the journey the child's going on, similar to yourself, that you struggled with reading, and that's a huge impetus for you in school now to make that journey as smooth as possible for the children. So in your school, you've got a huge drive, but a head teacher can't do it all.
Yeah.
So who do you delegate to, or who drives teaching and learning in your school?
This is a really good question, and one I thought about a lot. So as a class teacher, you're responsible for your own class, no problem. As a deputy, I had a fantastic job as a deputy. My head teacher trusted me completely to do the job and left me responsible for teaching and learning. I also worked for the NCTM, so my job was to support teaching and learning in my school, and then go to other schools, and help them develop maths. Absolutely amazing job, and I loved it, and I could see the impact that it had. When I became a head teacher, I didn't have an intention to set out to become a head teacher, but I did become a head teacher at the school where I was a teacher. And I had to work out what sort of head teacher I was going to be. So I thought about that well before I applied. And when I went to the interview, I said, I want to be a certain sort of head teacher. I want to be responsible for teaching and learning. I want to support the children. I want to be able to support the teachers. So basically the job I did as a deputy, I kind of moved a little bit to being a head, So the other aspects, in order to do that, I have to trust people and delegate people. So I deliberately set out to not do things myself, and if I figured if I could make everyone in my school, if I could support everyone in my school being 1 or 2% better, then that would have more impact than any head teacher possibly could. So you hear about these super heads that go into schools, and change things around, and I got a lot of respect for them, but I'm certainly not one of them. In my school, in the school where I work, everyone's pretty brilliant, and actually most of them are better than I am, so my job is to allow them to be great, and to provide them with the support. So that's what I do now, which is very different, than the role I had as a deputy, where I led things, but now, no, they lead things. So today, at the moment, there's TRG, which we got from the NCTM, Teacher Research Growing On, so they're happening maths, but I'm not leading it. I'd love to be leading it, but they're doing it, and that's empowering them to do it. So, yeah, I think you have to step back and facilitate, really, which doesn't naturally come to me. I prefer to do, but over the years I have learned to do that, and I think that's better for the people you work with, isn't it, than doing it all yourself.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that process? And I imagine there's a few sides to this. There's probably a staff wellbeing side, where you're thinking about how to motivate staff. There's maybe a subject knowledge side. There's maybe a pedagogical side. How do you allow your staff to be so brilliant? What do you put in place?
That's probably, you probably just described my job, like my job title in at least, it probably doesn't say it on a piece of paper, but how I see it, like how do I facilitate them doing it? And the first thing, I spoke a lot about how we care for the children. The same, I have to care for the staff and make sure that they're okay. So as an example, the first one you talked about was wellbeing. So we have like a wellbeing fund for the staff. So if any staff needs, they can have a free breakfast, free lunch, so if you went to Maslow, those basic needs, are taken care of. I think the cost of living probably is affecting a lot of our staff. So we helped them with that problem.
Do they have to do anything to receive the breakfast lunch? Do they have it with the children, or
no? You like when we got lots of like free bagels and you know, like things. So that it doesn't matter who you're looking after as long as you're looking after people, doesn't it? So staff can get them as well. And then we have a cupboard at school, you know, where we put like all food. So different people put food in there. Different people take food out of there. It's just a nice way, you know, like for it to be. Okay. But then the area, so yeah, you've got to look after people, and also that feeling of care. They know they're looked after. You know, like and it's not just me. It's everybody. So interestingly, I went to see one of our ECTs. You know, and the first thing that they do, you know, like if I ask how they are, you know, like they'll ask how I am. You know, so it's like it's certainly not me. It's the whole school. It's a culture thing of looking after each other. One of the teachers did some training a few years ago on, you know, asking twice how. If I said how are you doing, you're going to say fine. Yep. You know, if I ask you twice, you might tell me how you're really doing. You'd probably say nervous. But that's what happens. People do ask twice, you know, and they do look out for each other. So the first and foremost is like that feeling of well-being, but I think your question was how do we develop staff?
Just a supplementary question on the well-being side of it. I've seen that be developed sometimes with teaching staff, and leaders have a view of how can I empower my teaching staff? We'll do a well-being day. And it doesn't always have the required impact. And I've also seen almost kind of cringeworthy moments where I remember a guy coming in, and he was a trust teaching and learning person, and he said, the staff been doing great. I've brought some cakes for the teachers.
Yeah.
And there were TAs in the room, and they heard him say, these cakes are for the teachers, and that just created an instant divide. And it was awful to get around. So your food cupboard, I imagine everybody can put in and everybody can take out. How have you created a staff team where you don't have cliques or divides?
Everyone's there for the same reason, aren't they? You know, like to look after the children. And I know this is going to sound cringy, but on my first inset day, you know, like I united the job, and I was saying, look, we are all here for the same reason. It's to create, to change children's lives. We actually do change children's lives, and I said we are professional life changers. You know, like that we make children's lives better, but a teacher and a teaching assistant are doing exactly the same job. You know, like we do it in a slightly different way, but they're both doing exactly the same job. So there's no difference between the two. You know, so that's really important, and that's what you have to emphasise. And equally, if you're supporting the teachers through professional development, you have to support the teaching assistants through it as well. You know, like there isn't a difference, just a job title, and you can take that away. You mentioned before, like the one-off things, you know, like if a teacher's or teaching assistant's child's going seeing a show, then they are going seeing that show, you know, like and they're in the show, or the sports day, they're doing those things. That's an absolute must, and I would do the same. I'd go and see my girls, you know, in that sort of thing. But the well-being, bringing someone in and they all like singing and dancing sort of thing, no. So there's a well-worn phrase, isn't there, that culture eats strategy, you know, and actually if what you say doesn't align with the culture of your school, you know, you can say you do this for well-being, or we'll put this in place, but if it doesn't align with the culture, it means nothing, and actually it makes it worse, you know. So you genuinely have to look after each other and care, and every action that you do has to match that, you know. So that's really important. So as ambitious as I am for the school, the children and the staff, and we do push hard and we do work very, very hard. It's all done for the right reasons, which are improving the education and care for the children.
So I'm a TA in your school, and my son's in his nativity. I just pop along to the office and say, my son's in the nativity on the 12th of December, and you say, take the morning.
And when they come back, I want to know about the nativity as well. You know, that's the way it should be. You know, and also that's really, really important. You know,
how do you cover that? That's still logistics.
We are quite fortunate. We're a large school. You know. We made some decisions at the start which allowed us to be a financially secure school. So we didn't have an after school club, for example, and our children were going to lots of different after school clubs. I didn't like the idea of them all leaving, you know, on cold nights. So we set up an after school club which is brilliant. You know, the club matches our school values. It's within our school. That generates a revenue. You know, so that will pay for more teaching assistants. You know, so we do generate a revenue that way. The work that we do for the NCTM generates a revenue. We're an EEF research school as well. So all of those things are decisions that have been made not just to support other schools, but to support our children as well. So, yeah, we can cover it. I like teaching as well. You know, like I came into the job to be a teacher. So if someone's going out, you know, like I'm delighted to teach, you know. So, I'd teach most weeks as well.
What's your supply budget look like?
We've never used a supply teacher, you know. Yeah, we haven't used a supply teacher since I've been head teacher. I think I can say this, referring back to teaching assistants, when we ask them to cover classes, they know the children, they're all very highly skilled, but when we do it, we pay them double time to do it, which I'm not sure I'm allowed to do, you know, like, but I think that's an important thing, you know. I will do what I think's right, and if someone makes me stop, I'd stop. But so our teaching assistants would get the same salary as a supply teacher, you know, for doing that day, but they would do, you know, like they would do a better job. So again, if you're a teaching assistant, aren't well enough paid, but that gives them an opportunity to receive more money. So it's better for the teaching assistants, it's better for the children in our school, and it probably is better for our school budget as well. So the teaching assistants is short-term cover, you know, like if it's a day. So I have a teacher who is sick today, a teaching assistant is covering it. She is amazing. She will be doing a fantastic job, and she will be rewarded financially for, you know, for doing it. And we'd also move another teaching assistant into that class to support the teaching assistant rather than the teacher. But if it's long-term absence, then I think the insurance worked out around £20,000, you know, to cover. So we cancelled the insurance and employed another teacher, so that teacher, if someone's long-term sick, will cover that class, but they're in every other day, you know, to do other things. So when I say I have a non-contact reading lead, I do, as long as everyone's healthy, you know, like, but if I have long-term sick, or if someone was to leave at Christmas and I couldn't bring in someone that I thought matched the values and the quality of the teachers at our school, then my reading lead then becomes a teacher.
I've been really lucky that I've received some training with the NCTM, and I believe you've had some too. How did China look the second time you went?
Okay, so yeah, like you, I was very fortunate that there was a master lead for the NCTM, and even more fortunate that they allowed me to go to Shanghai and see their teaching, which was, you know, like really pivotal in my career and made me look at things in very different ways. So by the time I was going there, I knew that I was going to be a head teacher when I came back. So I didn't just look at the maths, I looked at the pedagogy and go into that problem solving. You're like, what are they doing that's making them so successful? And their teachers were phenomenal, you know, like their lessons were phenomenal, but it wasn't that their teachers were any more passionate or tried any harder. The thing that I noticed was the whole culture was different. That they were, the system that they had was designed to make the teachers the best that they could be, and the big thing that they had was time. So our teachers here will teach 9 till 3:15, and it'll go one lesson straight into another, and it's very much get that done, then on the next one, then you're marking your books and putting those things in place, and then you repeat that the next day. When I was in Shanghai, they would teach a lesson, then the teachers would all get together, discuss that lesson, how could they make that lesson better, developing the lesson for the next time. So it was a real level of reflection, and the biggest ingredients that they had that we didn't have was time. So that's one of the things that's the main thing that I took back from there, that our teachers can be every bit as good as them if we create the time for them to do that. So that's one of the things that I've really focused on. So when I did my NCTM work from there, I put the training in the morning, and then said in the afternoon, take the time to apply it. So the last thing you want to do is go on a training course in the morning and then run back and teach a different lesson not linked to it in the afternoon, because you lose it. So creating that time in my own school, if someone goes out, then I'll always create an opportunity for them to have follow-up time to reflect on it, to apply it. And every teacher in the school last week went to observe our maths lead teach that lesson, and now they've all gone off into groups to focus on an area of improving their own pedagogy. But I can't expect people to do that after school or at the weekends, so we create a lot of time on Thursdays for people to do that. And the impact of the children not having their class teacher on a Thursday sometimes, because the drama that they do is amazing, the science that they do is amazing, and the PE that they do is amazing, but actually no teacher's that good that if they're not there for one day, the children suffer, as long as that teacher comes back and delivers better lessons as a result. So creating time for people is one of the things that I really focus on, and I think is probably the thing that makes the biggest difference to their ability to teach, their children's ability to learn. And I also think it's really good for well-being, not as in they're doing a better job. They're not stressed.
Just coming to the budget side of that, because we're buying in PE, people from outside to do PE, to do science and to do drama. We created a little bit of revenue with after school clubs and things like that. Is there anything else that allows you to have a bigger budget in school to provide these opportunities?
The easiest way I can describe it is that is not considering the money as the school's money, is considering the money as the children's money. So it's probably a simplified version, but anything that's not having a direct impact on children, then that's secondary. So we don't have the most beautiful building. The staff rooms a little bit run down. But the things that have an impact on children, they're the things that we focused on. It's where you spend your money, and so there's ways of generating a revenue, which we've certainly done, and there's ways of saving, and thinking, okay, so for every pound that I have, that's got to have the most impact on the children, and having that mindset is really important.
As a head teacher and controlling budgets, what causes you the biggest headache? Is it things like teachers' pay increases that are done to you without your decisions?
Yeah, this is a real dilemma. So, and the easiest way for me to put it is the teaching assistants. So, teaching assistants, I've said how much I think of them. Hugely underpaid, and also they get paid pro rata, which again I think is wrong. I think they should be paid, all the time. That's a different conversation, but I really do. They do a fantastic job, and the salary doesn't reflect that. So when they got their almost 2,000 pay rise, I absolutely deserve it. I'm delighted for them, but then that's £50,000 out of the school budget, and that isn't put in, so therefore, finances are a problem, and I know at the moment it's quite a topical issue, but so say for example, as an individual, if I get a 5% pay rise as a head teacher, my instant thought is not that I have more disposable income for me as an individual, it's that is going to cause a problem for my school, and that 5% that I will receive, that's coming out of what the children the resources for them. So it's a real dilemma, in that something that could personally benefit an individual damages the potential opportunities for children, and I find that very difficult. That is a real challenge that I face.
I was advised by a CEO that I was working with to become an Ofsted inspector, just as some professional development for myself. And I went and spoke to an Ofsted inspector that I know, and they said, just be careful, Liam, because sometimes your moral compass is challenged. And I wondered about being a head teacher, if sometimes you're challenged morally. Is there a compromise between values and necessity?
The Ofsted question's a good question. So we were Ofsted the year before I became a head teacher, and then we were Ofsted the year I became a head teacher. So we had 2 in 18 months. And I think I was a little bit naive, my values are very strong to me, and they're the values of the school. So every decision that we make is based on our school values, which Care, Aspire, Achieve. Every decision, who we employ, what our curriculum looks like, every decision we make, every leadership meeting refers back to these values, and it doesn't. So maybe I was a little bit naive in that there's hoops you have to jump through for Ofsted, but I always set myself like my own personal belief that I'm not doing that, you know, like so it didn't actually bother me what Ofsted said, because that's one day, isn't it? You know, like it's one day in a couple of years, whereas the children are there every day. So we did everything that we could for the children, you know, and put that in place. We were actually very fortunate that when the inspector came in, he looked around our school, and his values matched our values. He was very much, you know, I think Ofsted come under a lot of criticism, but he was very much about the children and very much about teaching and learning. And he couldn't have been more complimentary, to be honest, you know, like about the school, and that was like a very proud thing. But it was good for us because it matched our values, and what they said was very pleasing. And this was important as well, and the praise that he gave in the report that he provided us, every single one of our school, you know, like parents, children, teachers could see how they'd impacted on that. So it was nice to receive that recognition.
From what I can see on your website, almost everything you do is about developing your staff, and you have a really research-based approach. Why do you have this approach?
Yeah, we have it for multiple reasons. So when it comes down to it, you know, like the quality first teaching, which makes the biggest difference, isn't it? So the higher quality of every lesson that we can deliver, the more impact that it's going to have on children. So I think when I first started teaching, there was a lot of opinion, you know, like people doing what they believed was best, and that's obviously got to range, hasn't it, in the standards. So I read a book a long time ago, Hattie's research, and it was looking at some things have a greater impact than others, and that really stuck with me, and that's what first made me start thinking about metacognition. From there, I attended some EEF training, and I found that really interesting, that actually there was evidence to show that some things worked more than others. And it was around the time where it was showing that teaching assistants cost a lot of money but have little impact. So I spent a year developing our teaching assistants, you know, like developing all their skills, improving their knowledge, and at the end of the year it had very little impact.
Oh wow.
Yeah, hardly any impact at all. And the reason wasn't the knowledge. I'd got the knowledge, but I didn't do a good job of implementing it. So the following year, I actually worked with the EEF and some of their EEF experts. They worked with us, and they did it across Stockport, and it was all about the implementation. And the bit that I'd missed is actually, it's not the teaching assistants, it's the leader of the teaching assistants and their support that they'd got in place. So I did the project again, but did it much better, and we focused on the leadership and the implementation, and that had a huge impact on our teaching assistants. And interestingly, one of the key things that came back from that was time as well. So every day we have feed-forward feedback where we pay the teaching assistants to stay at the end of the day, so they're involved in the lesson. So previously, teaching assistants that I'd had, you know, they used to have to guess what I was talking about because they had no idea of the lesson, but now they're involved in the feedback and what that lesson looks like. So that had a huge impact, which led to a more research-focused approach across the school and less of an opinion one. And then as we got better at that, our results got better. And we applied to be an associate research school for the EEF, and we were very proud that we got that position. And that allows us to support schools across our area and teachers across that area. So if you come into education to help children, now originally it was just 30, then it was a school, but actually now we can support thousands of children by being a research school. And then now we've been awarded the position of full research school, which we start in September as well, which is a real opportunity to develop our school, but help many more schools and children and teachers as well.
Most schools have 5 inset days, and they're paced however schools decide throughout the year. Do you have a slightly different approach? Yeah,
we did this year. It worked really well, and it links CPD and wellbeing. So we have 5 weeks off in the summer. You know, it's a long time. So we all came back a day early, which allowed us to put an inset day the first day of every half term. So if you've got 6 half terms, we could put one, so we didn't count the first one as an official inset day. So that means that every half term, we start with a real clear focus of what we want to do, and then the insets for that half term, like Wednesday ones you refer to, example, they follow on it and build on it. But then the other thing, it means that every teacher and every teaching assistant can take a day to suit them over the course of the year. So yeah, that's really important and goes back to that time and well-being, and again to that problem solving. So it links CPD, it links well-being. So yeah, that's worked well this year.
What did the staff use their day off for?
A lot of them put it in the week before Christmas and went Christmas shopping, because we didn't break up till the 23rd, so a lot of them use that for, but they can use it for whatever they want. I was in Egypt for mine, so yeah, it's all very good.
And can you bank those and put them together, or do they have to be used within the year?
I don't mind what people do. We also we go to one of the adventure holidays. We go on one of them, but I think it was £250 to go for the children to go in the week. But if we went at the weekend, it was 120. That's really important that we want all our children to go. I'm very fortunate that I work with teachers that will do that. So we take them to PGL and places like that at the weekend rather than in the week, and then teachers can have those days as well.
And leading an outstanding school is a difficult job. Maybe people think, as the head teacher of an outstanding school, you need to be the first person there every day and the last person to leave at night to sustain that outstanding status. Are you first there every day and last to leave every night?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think over a period of time, I think my priorities, have very much been about, the children at our school, and I think that there has been periods of time where I've put those, my school and the children there and my colleagues there before, my own family, and that's something, if I could go back in time, that I do regret to some extent, because it is very difficult to fit everything in. So when I talk to my staff, I genuinely, will encourage them to spend time with their family, that their families is the most important thing. And that was a challenge for me. Maybe I learned that a little bit too late, but for them, if I've learned something, I can help them. So that looking after your own family and looking after yourself is really important to me, and I do speak to the staff a lot about that. We do work hard. I might be first in and I might be first to leave sometimes, but today I'm picking my girls up at 4:30, because I don't want them in after school club till 6, so I'll get them at 4:30 and we'll do something nice together. And I don't think it's made me any worse of a head teacher for doing that, and I think that's the same for everyone. So that work-life balance is really important.
Thank you very much, Phil, for joining us today. It's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you, and I really appreciate the time that you've given. And I think lots of people will appreciate that too. And I can't wait to hear what people think about the conversation.
Thank you for asking me. I've enjoyed it, Liam. I really have. It's been interesting, and I've enjoyed the conversation. If it is useful to people, then I'm delighted if it helps anyone. So yeah, thank you.
What challenges have you overcome? And how does it affect the way you teach? Let us know by emailing podcast@whiterosemaths.com or on any of our social media channels. We read and reply to each one and would love to draw upon your thoughts in future episodes.